About 5 years ago, I was dating this absolute nutter of a woman, which I know says a lot about me because obviously I chose to get involved with this person. I had a lot of work to do with myself in certain areas, and we got locked together because of certain patterns. But one of the reasons that she was such a lunatic was that she would always try and put me on a guilt trip over the tiniest little things. Like if I didn't wash the dishes in the right way, she would say, if you don't wash the dishes using this particular method, then you don't love me. Or if you don't call me at a certain time, you don't love me. If you don't do this, you don't love me. If you don't do that, you're not a good person. And it made me realize that a lot of the time, when people are throwing these ideas of morality at us, or what it means to be loving or a good person or whatever, they're not talking about the truth. They're just talking about their own stuff, and they're projecting it onto us. What if trying to be a good person is just a mask like any other? What if your conscience, that little voice in your head that causes you to hesitate and hold back and to try and please people, isn't anything to do with the real you or absolute morality or anything like that? It's just a product of conditioning and emotional blockages. And it's something that can cause you to actually derail the train of your life, so to speak, and for you to become unreal, which is going to lead to you feeling like you have to be a people pleaser, or that you have to betray yourself because you're not expressing anything real, you're holding back. All of these things really are just symptoms of being unreal, and being a good person is often not what we think it is. Do you ever stop to think about where your conscience even came from in the first place? A lot of the time, you think that little voice in your head that's telling you what's wrong or right is you, because it might sound like you. If you have an inner monologue, some people don't, unfortunately. But a lot of the time, it's not you at all. It's just your social conditioning, stuff that you picked up in childhood, from your parents or in school, etc., from the media, or it's the consequence of your own emotional blockages. You might have underlying shame, for example, that makes you feel like you have to act like an especially good person so that you can finally feel worthy. Or maybe you feel guilty, you have unresolved guilt because you've done something in the past that you think is bad, and so then you try and compensate again by being a good person so that you can feel good. And in both cases, your conscience is just an extension of those underlying emotions. It's nothing to do with universal ideas, let's say, or experiences of what actual goodness is or what realness is. If you think about it, it really does begin at childhood. There's an old saying that when you're a kid, you hear the word no way more than you hear the word yes. So you might try and play with something, they tell you no. You might be too loud, they tell you no. No, 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 for most of your life. And that's because the no's are supposed to be teaching you how to be a good boy or a good girl according to your parents. But really, the reason that they say no a lot of the time is because the things you're saying yes to are triggering their emotional stuff. They often want you not to be good or bad, but to be easy to control, which is understandable because kids can be really annoying and it must be very difficult to be a parent. But the end result of that is that the real version of who we are goes into hiding. And then it gets exacerbated when we start to go to school and we go to college, or we start watching movies or whatever it is, and we pick up this idea of what it means to be a good person, and instead of actually thinking about it rationally or getting in touch with our own realness and just acting in a good way because we're connected to wholeness and trying to see others in a real way as well, we start putting on this little mask and acting out what it means to be good instead of just being good. Another thing that can feed into our conscience of what's good, what's bad, is our parents' expectations. I remember when I was a kid, well, when I was a teenager, I found a video of when I was a kid. I was staying at my dad's house, and I hadn't seen him for a few years, but there were these old tapes from an old camcorder, and I was just watching them one night, and there was this video that my dad had been filming of me playing in a football game. And I was chasing after the ball, I was running towards it, I was maybe even going to score a goal. And you could hear him behind the camera going, "Go on, son, you can do it." And I kept running, but then at the last minute I just gave up on the ball and I decided to do a cartwheel, which is weird because I don't even like doing cartwheels and things like that. But in that moment, I heard my dad's heart break behind the camera. He was like, "What's he doing? Like, what the hell is this? Why is he doing this?" And in that moment, when I watched that video back all those years later, I realized that that was probably the exact moment in my life where I shattered my dad's expectations and he just gave up on me as a good person. So that's a slightly tongue-in-cheek example, but the point is that good and bad these days are more about interpretations and expectations and people's stuff rather than anything real or true. And so if good and bad are just interpretations, you can't win. Some people on the left, for example, are going to think you're a bad person if you upset people's feelings. Some people on the right are going to think you're a bad person if you don't just cling to the facts, whatever they even are. And so it's like the Aristotle thing. If you want to avoid criticism, the only way to do it is to say nothing, do nothing, and be nothing. But you're not here to be nothing, you're here to be something. And so the only way out of it is to step beyond the good and the bad and to get into the real. For some reason, all of this ground beneath my feet has been burned up. I'm sure that's a metaphor for something. We can use it as one. In this case, it's going to be a metaphor for burning through all that bullshit. The opinions, the fragmentary ideas and interpretations of reality that keep us back from reality itself. I think there is an absolute way of acting in a moral way, but really what that is that we're just connected to the truth about ourselves, the world and reality. So we're accepting ourselves, we're accepting other people, we're not hiding the shadow self, so we're projecting it out onto others and then freaking out and treating them badly when the shadow, which is the disowned parts of ourselves, is reflected back at us like a mirror. Instead, we're just focusing on our own thing. That's the only real thing you can do. Focus on what is real for you without judging it. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad if you're not hurting anyone. What actually becomes bad is when you suppress it and then you get all worked up and become tensing yourself and then you start lashing out at people because you're not acting in a real way. If you want to act in a real, true way, then the easiest way to do it is to take real action. And there's going to be something inside you right now that you know you need to do that you're probably holding back on. And if you do it without asking if it's good or bad, you're going to take yourself to the next level. And so it's just about finding those things, doing them, and then the next step will reveal itself, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, until you get where you want to be. A lot of the time, your conscience just stops you acting on that real stuff. But there's nothing wrong with acting on that real stuff, because if you've done the inner work of integrating the shadow and becoming more whole, and then acting, having a foundation of regulation within yourself and safety, then you're not going to hurt people with the real things that you do. You're actually going to use the real things within you to serve other people, which is going to make life better overall. And so it's not about good or bad, it's about acting or not acting. The conscience is just that little voice that causes you to hold back and hesitate a lot of the time on doing what is actually right and real for you. It's also going to allow you to go down the rabbit hole of being sent on guilt trips that you don't belong on, of being betraying yourself, not believing in yourself, basically causing all kinds of friction and problems in your life that don't need to be there. And this is why it's so important to ask yourself, are you actually being a good person? Or are you just trying to be one to get something from life, to compensate for that shame, to let go of that guilt? Whatever it is, when it comes to being real, you don't need to get anything. You just need to be it and do it. So that was a video about your conscience. Sometimes what you think is your conscience is actually your ego. Except it's talking to you in the tones of goodness and morality and love and all these things. If you dig a little deeper, you'll see that a lot of the time, it's just your attempts to try and get something to fill a void inside yourself. It's not about being good. It's about compensating for the shame or overcoming the guilt that you think being good will give you. Ironically, what you're trying to get deep down is already inside you. It's your realness, your connection to wholeness, your ability to take real action, your ability to flow. And so if you forget about being good and focus on that stuff by taking real action, then you'll find that you're going to feel a lot better, because there's going to be less friction in your life, less frustration, and less misery. You don't need to try and achieve something when you can already just receive what your realness has to offer you. You got to do the work, which is not always easy, like I said. And then once you've done it, you get into the flow and you can just be and then do, instead of just doing things to avoid the fact that you've become disconnected from your being. Something like that. So I hope that helped you. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you to everyone that's been commenting, people that I've talked to, video calls recently. That's been awesome. Really hope this helped. Stay real out there, and peace to you.